is excitement in the air today in the Kroll household because my men are happy that I'm making chicken paprikash and Spaetzle. This is probably my husband and my son's favorite dish, aside from pasties. It's probably a very close tie. So what I've done is I've started with about 2 cups of flour into a plastic bag. To that, I've added very good paprika. Here's the paprika I use. I actually get this from the Dearborn Ham Company down in Dearborn. You can order it though online. And I use sweet paprika and not hot paprika. To that, I take my chicken, which I've cut into fillets, and this was, I think, about 3 breasts of chicken. I use boneless, skinless. Other people use full cuts of chicken, thighs, drumsticks, things like that. That's how my family like it, so this is what I do. I take the flour that I've seasoned very generously with the paprika and some salt and pepper. And don't worry, we'll put the recipe up on the video. And I shake it up very good to get it mixed in. I then take a look at it and decide if I have enough paprika. To me, it looks like I could use a little bit more. So I'm going to dump the rest of the can and recycle that. And then again, you just want to mix it very thoroughly. Stick your chicken pieces into the flour mixture to coat. And by the way, this flour mixture will be used later to help thicken the sauce. Chicken paprika is a very, very common dish in Hungary, Austria. My mother was Hungary Austrian, and she developed this recipe. This was not something that her grandma did or her mother did, at least as far as I know. I think she got this out of a cookbook in the 1960s or 70s. Now, some people use different things in their paprikash, like different kinds of veggies. This is how my mom made it. After people eat this paprikash, I've had them go to restaurants and come back and tell me that when they ordered it at restaurants, the restaurants could not compare to mine. So people genuinely seem to really like this paprikash. So the chicken pieces, as you can see, are completely coated in the flour paprika mixture. Now we'll go over to the stove. I've been heating about 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil in my skillet. And you do not want to overcrowd your chicken. You want it to cook and get a coating on each side and not to steam. You can do this in batches if you need to. I probably should have done this one in batches, but for now, we'll just make room. Save your flour mixture for later. Now what you're going to do is saute this on a fairly high heat. I've got mine at medium high for about 3 or 4 minutes per side. The chicken's been cooking about 3 or 4 minutes per side. As you can see, it's got a nice little smear on it. So I remove the chicken to a platter or plate while I prepare the graving sauce, which ultimately turns into a delicious gravy. I think the gravy in this dish is what makes it so popular. Now, if it looks like it's got a little too much oil, you can take a paper towel and remove some or pour some of it off. I don't usually do that, I just did it to show you. But the next thing I do is I add 1 whole chopped up onion. Now this is where different parts of the country and Hungary use different things. Some people used red peppers in their paprikash, or green and yellow peppers. Others use onions. My mom just used onions, so that's what we use. You're going to saute the onions for about 3 or 4 minutes. The onions have been cooking for about 3 or 4 minutes, and now I'm going to add just a tiny bit of stock and use my wooden spoon to scrape up the brown bits. That adds a lot of flavor to the braising liquid. And I try to make sure I get them all the little brown bits. Alright. The next thing I do is add some of that leftover flour and paprika mixture. Probably a good, maybe 1/4 cup. This is going to act ultimately as a thickening agent for your paprikash. And I cook it for about a minute or 2 so that the flour taste gets cooked off. And as you can see, it turns kind of pasty. After I've let it cook for a moment or 2, I add a carton of stock. Sometimes you have to add 2 cartons. Basically, you want to add enough stock to cover your chicken, because the chicken's going to go back in and braise for the next half an hour. So you nestle your chicken back in. And you can see this nice golden color on the platter. That's from the paprika. So you're going to bring this to a boil and then reduce it to simmer and let it simmer for a good half an hour to 40 minutes with the lid offset. While the chicken is cooking, I'm going to make for you the Spaetzle, which is a noodle, and it's a drop noodle. I've done this in 2 stages. I already did half of the Spaetzle before while we were off camera. But to illustrate how I do this, this is 2 cups of all-purpose flour with about a teaspoon of salt. This is 2 eggs that I've lightly beaten, and I add that to the flour. And I'm going to mix it. And if you feel like it's not crumbly enough and needs another egg, you can add another egg. I'm going to have my husband stir this because my hands are painful. I have arthritis and I'm going to have him stir it. So that's what the egg mixture looks like with the flour. I now have some ice cold water that I've been letting chill, and I'm going to add about 1 cup. If I need to add more, I will. You can do this in a mixer to make it easier on your hands. You can do it by hand. My mom always did it by hand, so that's how I do it. And I can see that it needs some more. So I'm going to add a little bit more. All right, so once you've got it mixed, it should look like that. It should drop fairly easily off the spoon, but not too quickly off the spoon. So you can see that it's dropping in spoonfuls, but relatively slowly. So we're going to go over to a pot of boiling water and make the Spaetzle. Now, this is a Spaetzle maker. I found this at TJ Maxx. You can find them a lot of places, like discount stores, or you can order it online. Let me first show you how I use the Spaetzle maker, and then I will show you how my mom used to do this, my grandmother. And you just take it and you slowly work the dough. I don't know if you can see the dough is going down through the holes. You can use a slotted spoon or a colander or really anything with holes, as long as you can get the mixture through the holes. All right. Now what has happened is some of them are already starting to rise to the top. I go ahead and I give it a quick stir, and then I let them come to a boil again. Once the Spaetzle has come to a boil, I stir them around a bit, and then I put them in a strainer to drain the excess water. And then I throw them into a casserole dish. I don't rinse them, I just put them in the casserole dish. And because I usually do this in layers, I add a couple of pats of butter so they don't stick. And of course you can strain them into a colander if you don't have one of these. You can usually get one of these at a dollar store, plastic one, for pretty cheap. And so I've strained the excess water, and I'm going to throw them into the casserole dish with the others that I did earlier. Now I'm going to show you a technique, if you don't have a Spaetzle maker, that I learned growing up. You take the back of a spatula and you take your Spaetzle mix and you put it on the back of a spatula, and then you just cut the Spaetzle noodles off of it, and that's your go-to if you don't have a Spaetzle maker. I was at my girlfriend Sherry's one time feeding an army. Her whole family was there, and I made it like this because I didn't have my Spaetzle maker, and I filled up one of those very large catering pans with it, and it all got eaten. And the same principle, once you get them into the water, I don't know if you can see this, you cook them until they boil, and then you strain them. Takes longer to do it this way for sure. So I will finish up the Spaetzle and see you back here once the chicken is done. Alright, the chicken has been cooking for about 40 minutes. As you can see, it's tender and falling apart. And that's pretty much how you want it. See how it's falling apart? And of course, this braising liquid, I'm now going to turn into liquid gold, my family calls it, which is a fabulous gravy to go over the Spaetzle. Now, if for whatever reason your braising liquid does not feel like it's thick enough, you want to bring it to a boil. And if it does not feel like it's thickening enough, you can add equal parts of cornstarch and water while it's boiling, drizzle it in, and you can turn it into a thicker gravy. I think this looks thick enough. It's coating the back of a spoon, so I'm not going to do that in the interest of time. I've been letting the sour cream sit at room temperature for the entire time I've been cooking, because I think it incorporates a little bit better when it's at room temperature. And basically, after you have made sure your gravy is nice and thick and skimmed off the fat, you then again reduce the heat and take about a 1/4 cup to 1/3 of a cup with sour cream. And you whisk it into your gravy. And we'll be back here when we're ready to eat it in about 5 minutes. Okay, my husband Doug is joining us. This is one of his favorite dishes. Would you like to tell everybody why it's one of your faves?
Well, I think it's the best flavor and everything else that you've ever done. So I always told Eileen if she would have gave me this earlier, I would have married her sooner.
So I've put a couple pieces on the plate, and now I'm going to give them a nice healthy scoopful of the Spaetzle, without trying to make too much of a mess. Is that enough or a little bit more?
Yeah, that's good right now.
And then some gravy over the top of the Spaetzle and the chicken. I probably could have thickened this a little bit with some cornstarch, but it will be good, and my husband will like it. Take a bite and let us know what you think.
Be careful.
It's hot.
Don't do what you did for the pasties.
Yeah, just do the Spaetzle for now.
That's really good.
Does it need salt and pepper?
A little bit more salt.
So adjust your seasonings. I forgot to mention that. I didn't do that in this situation. Add a little more salt and pepper if necessary. And I hope you all enjoy this wonderful family dish brought to you by my mother, made by me.